Hello, everyone. It's Ipatios Moisiadis, and this is another episode of Cleantech Geek. As you can see, we are recording a bit differently this time under the current situation with COVID-19. Usually, we would have our guests in a more intimate environment. But actually, this situation gives us an opportunity to reach out across the sea and discuss today with Andrew from Green IT. And it's a privilege to have you with us, Andrew. So we're going to have a kind of friendly discussion as always. We're going to discuss about current issues that we have in our industry. We're going to know a bit more about Green IT and what you guys are doing, and it would be extremely interesting to see the differences between the US and Europe, and also discuss about your plans about the next day and what kind of what the next day holds, let's say, for Green IT, given the current situation. But also the possible opportunities that this creates for our industry and for the future. So, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely, really happy to be here.
And as a starter, can you give us a brief description about Green IT, your background, how this whole thing started, and what is your current vision as a company?
Sure. The story begins a long time ago. It was 2003, 2004, the early days of utility scale wind in the US. Right place, right time is kind of the way to start the story. Was involved in technology, building software. At that time in my career, I was really focused on time series data. It was in a different industry initially. It was biotech and pharmaceuticals, but we started to specialize in understanding very fast data. It was 1 second, 5 minute, 10-minute data, understanding the challenges of how to collect it, how to analyze it, how to quickly filter it. And having that specialty kind of attracted a range of work, and we got lucky. Along came a contract to work on time series data, but at a utility scale wind project. It was in the Midwest US. The owners had changed a couple times, and they were having a number of issues on the plants, but primarily they couldn't even diagnose. They didn't understand how to evaluate the problems. And we were brought in to, in a sense, troubleshoot, help them develop a system to analyze and digest the data. And that was the beginning. Very quickly got hooked on the industry and started to dive in. It was a one-off to understand the data, but that just snowballed into a number of other opportunities. And that was the beginning. We were right place, right time. At first it was preventative maintenance activities, then it was landowner payments, then it was the SCADA network itself. And from the very beginning, we kind of stood out as just being a very flexible technology problem solver. And over the years, we fixed one-off problems, all focused on the variety of challenges that owners were facing. And I guess a decade of doing that, a decade later, we realized that we could start stitching these things together into a unified package. And that's kind of how we are today. We still are building software for owners of mixed technology platforms, solar, wind, battery, a little bit of hydro in there, but also providing SCADA support. So similar focus. We're just helping owners understand their portfolios, helping them make better decisions, and informing that with good data. It's been an interesting ride as the industries have grown. But at the core of what we do has not changed. We gather good data. We connect users or bring this data to the most important stakeholders, give them tools to do something with it, and all with the focus of getting good knowledge out of there to improve decision making.
Okay, so your core, if you would like, service is that you have a technology platform that connects, first of all, gets the data, let's say, analyzes the data and comes up with what we would call using special formulas or data analytics. You come up with specific information, which helps asset owners take more informative decisions about their assets and their portfolios. But discussing a bit with you, there is another arm. You're doing a bit of what we call here, if you would like, in the UK or in Europe, asset management, and you do a bit of technical consulting as well. Is that a core part of your activities?
Absolutely. So we've been in the industry now for 2 decades. We've been working in this industry for a long time and watching it grow up. And with a focus on data and technology, we're really uniquely positioned to offer advisory services on all matters of the renewable energy life cycle. Certainly we are a technology shop, but technology permeates all levels of these portfolios. So we're helping owners make good decisions, not just about once they've collected data, but also how to put these systems in place and how to best set up systems for a portfolio, for a fleet level, to harvest that data and then share that knowledge across the portfolio. Specifically, we have a SCADA shop. We don't offer a SCADA platform. We just help owners extract best value out of their SCADA. We have a historization approach. Again, not technology specific, just assembling programs so that owners are able to not only standardize some of their technology, but just start developing a consistent method of how they collect, how they analyze, how they gain value out of the data.
Okay. In this point, I have to mention that this is a live recording over Zoom. So if we have any sort of breaks in the picture, I hope our viewers later on will understand that this is an extraordinary kind of situation, and everybody's using internet, so internet speeds are, let's say, lower than usual. But diving into, I mean, you have a base in Philly, United States. But you have, as I understand it, more global aspirations, if you would like, more global, ambitions. How would you describe the current state of the renewable energy market in the US, and perhaps where do you see the main differences between clients or portfolios in the US and mainland Europe?
Great question. The current state of renewable energy in the U.S. is strong. Now, obviously, we are in the time of the pandemic, and maybe the market will reveal itself to be different on the other end here. But corporate offtake has redefined the market over the last couple of years. The state of subsidies, incentives has changed significantly, and yet the progress of renewables has continued unabated. We see new and different ways of approaching offtake, very successful, and then also other technologies, for example, battery, really impacting the potential of projects. So I would say strong is the current state of the renewable energy market. Decarbonization is not going away. The prospects of a very large electric vehicle fleet is still not going away, and those challenges, bringing responsible, consistent, safe, and environmentally conscious power onto the grid is here to stay. So yes, we are here in Philly. You did call that out. We don't have the most progressive state government here in Pennsylvania. But I would say U.S. Coast to coast, things are going well. New markets have popped up in the last couple of years. A lot of development going on in places where 5-6 years ago it would be unexpected. Developments, for example, in Michigan have really changed the market in the Southeast United States as well. So I would say the adaptation to the lack of subsidy or incentives is a distinctive element of the U.S. market, and we are hopeful as an industry as a whole. We're hopeful that trend is going to continue in the near future.
If you compare the current opportunity, if you would like, in Europe and in the United States, where do you see the big opportunities lie, especially in a product like yours, a technology platform? Because we have seen many solutions. There are a few companies that they are venturing into this space with data analytics. They're using big words like AI and all the rest. But in my personal experience, we've seen a small level of adaptation of those kind of technologies across the board. So how do you see, if you would like, the opportunity specifically on technology adaptation from larger players, and how would you see that connected moving forward to an unsubsidized environment where data and information will be much more critical in decision making, where decision making has to be instant?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There are a lot of different players with different types of technologies out there. I think the biggest challenge is not quite on the technology level, but it's on use case and understanding the type of tool that will offer real value to the customer. I'm a technologist, and I completely believe that anything is possible with technology. Now, it may take you a long time to get there. There may be some hair pulling along the way, but that's not the right way to think about the problem. It's not if you can. You really need to focus on the use case and develop a perspective that's important. So we do see a lot of this digitalization of the renewable energy industry. There's AI and machine learning and all of these fantastic potential solutions out there, but we're not there yet. The use case now is more plumbing. It's more just collecting the data. I almost want to postpone AI. We've just hit the pause button. Let's get there in a year or two. Let's focus on helping each customer develop a system to accurately, consistently collect all of the data, put it in a robust and scalable and an elastic, cost-effective storage solution, and have that be the primary right now. Let's control all of the data. Let's make sure we're measuring everything appropriately, and then start looking at where we go from there. I think that's the use case for the moment. So again, anything being possible here, but the point of emphasis for today needs to be on data advocacy. So thinking about owners and helping them gather everything that they're going to need. And that's a challenge that we see. It begins early, and that this is something that we spend a lot of time working with our customers on. This is a development decision. This is a design decision initially. This is something that we need to follow through during commissioning. And then it's something that will live with the plant ongoing. Now, retrofitting a lot of these facilities is difficult. And there is a certain sentiment for a kind of development first industry that it has challenges understanding that stewardship is going to be very important. Retrofitting is somewhat of a nuisance or a headache, but offers significant value. If you spend that time appropriately, if you focus on establishing the right means to consistently collect the data, then you will have that opportunity for upside initiatives. You will have that opportunity for optimization in the future. Now, okay, I don't want to be negative on AI. I don't want to be negative on machine learning. These technologies will impact our industry, but we will not be able to take advantage of them unless we've really focused on collecting good, integral data.
Yeah, and I think this was a very kind of key point that I've communicated very recently to a conference in Munich organized by New Energy just before the lockdowns happened in Europe. That we have so many solutions, and we had in this kind of conference outside so many vendors selling all sorts of technology solutions. But my key problem at the moment is that I still don't know whether my sensors on my parks, whether the parks actually produce reliable data. And I don't have any other source of data that I can compare. So for me, it's not just collecting the data, but it's validating the data. And that starts very rightly, as you very rightly said, on the design level, on the development level, where you pick up the sensors you're going to use. You make a robust system that has security embedded into it, which is, how do you collect the data? Where do you store it? How do you protect it? And how do you validate it? And once you have a validated pool of data, then you can start doing the analysis. Then you can start bringing platforms like yours that you can do You can do the data analytics and give me as an asset manager the information that I need in order to optimize my asset, or to take decisions on changing things, or optimizing my O&M, or doing all sorts of retrofits in the turbines or whatever else. But we're not there. And the message from a lot of vendors was, oh, if you use our system, we're going to cut down your cost. And this was across across the service providers, or most of the clients were service providers. And I was saying to them, my problem is not that I want someone to cut my cost. I want someone that can give me that extra fat, that extra level of service that I can offer to my client. So my problem is that I'm already too low, so I cannot go lower. I need to go higher, and to go in order to go higher, I need to add another level of value for my clients. So it's very refreshing that we agree on that kind of point. But how do you see? I mean, discussing about this kind of technology and data, we're still going into situations. We're doing for example, some cybersecurity audits at the moment, and the stuff we find in parks is shocking. Essentially, the equipment is off the shelf, house level kit that you put in, solar parks and all of that. And there is no storage, there is no, security triggers, there's nothing. And the industry is just waking up in this realization that I have data which has tremendous value for me, because that's how you prove the historical continuation of your site and your production. So down the line, your site, the value of the site is dependent on those data. But we have nothing in place either to protect it, no policies, no nothing. So what is your perspective on that?
I really appreciate that prompt with regards to cybersecurity. This is something that I'm personally very passionate about, and I'm assuming that we're going to be aligned on. I think it must begin with policy, and each organization needs to look at their appropriate regulatory standards. Here in the US, we have our NERC-CIP guidelines. There's the NIST standards, and then internationally, there's a number of regulatory bodies that have developed standards for guiding what a important, or I would say what a critical cybersecurity posture should be. These policies, though, need to take that into account, but also the corporate IT requirements for which that the ownership group needs to adhere to as well. Essentially, though, these guidelines need to dictate design elements. So let's bring our hardware into a consistent family of products so that you can build up your knowledge, and of course make expedient remediation decisions as well. The policy needs to take into effect your operators and setting guidelines for administration, setting guidelines for network access, and all of this should be laid out, should be very detailed, in any engagement that ownership is going to have with an operator or third party, etc., needs to follow this policy. We've taken a very strong perspective on what we call ARC. It's an asset responsibility chart. It's very basic, but we help owners audit their facilities. Let's identify each of the assets. Let's define what a minimum set of cybersecurity and maintenance requirements would be, put it into a chart, and then work with the operators and all third parties to make sure that each and every aspect of those requirements are being met. Having good policy is important, but coordinating all of the stakeholders. Far too often we see ownership having these requirements, but not fully understanding that it's their responsibility to fulfill them. Additionally, we approach this challenge by advocating monitoring. This is not your operational monitoring program, but it's a cybersecurity monitoring. It's an IT asset monitoring program. It's certainly less intensive than a traditional remote operations facility. But here you're watching the assets. Everything on the network has an IP address. It has a heartbeat. You should know when they're going online and offline. Every facility should have a SIM, a means to collecting log files, essentially, to see who's knocking on the door, to see who's trying to brute force your way in. And then from a monitoring desk perspective, the ability then to respond to that. All of this is certainly proactive, but there's more that needs to be done here. There's other aspects of security. We also have personnel. These are just individuals interacting with the plants themselves. An awareness program is essential. Good training, and that's recurring training as well. The threats that we see out there, they're not stopping, and we need to constantly and with good vigilance be connecting down to our personnel and being really mindful as our personnel changes on our plants. You mentioned a moment ago about some facilities realizing, store-bought routers sitting on the perimeter. We'll pick that up during the ARC process. We'll understand those. We'll look to replace those, but the people that are interacting with them are just as important. And then finally, there's the physical security. If we're placing this hardware in an insecure area, we're just opening ourselves up to a lot of trouble. I like to describe security as kind of it's a one-way arrow. We see our standards getting tighter. We see our requirements getting more strict, and that's not going to change. So here in the US, we're under advisement for certain grades of our facilities to handle a certain level of cybersecurity. And as an organization, we're looking to find ways to deliver to those standards for all facilities, regardless of their specific profile. We think that regardless of their impact on the grid, these facilities are large commercial investments, and we need to be protecting them just the same.
Absolutely, and I think this realization now sinks in a lot of investors that they thought that the parks are just mirrors on the field, but actually they are critical infrastructure projects, and they are generating assets. They are power plants. So the inaction on, if you would like, on cybersecurity policy and all the related issues is as if the asset is lacking a critical part of its policy, and the owners are exposing themselves into a whole lot of trouble if they cannot prove that they have taken the necessary measures, and they don't have the policies in place. They did everything they could in case something happens, and this brings a lot of issues that they might have with the value of the asset, with their reputation, if they're a listed company, and so on and so forth.
The renewable energy certainly hitting a high profile. These facilities are in the news. Some of these owners are very large organizations, and it's not nice to say, but there's a bit of a target on the backs of these organizations. And one of the metaphors I like to offer is when you're a bad guy or a nefarious actor, you only have to be good once and be successful in order to compromise the system. But working to protect ownership, working on the side of good here, you need to be right, and you need to be good all the time. So yes, the profile is there, but the number of vectors that we need to be aware of and the different ways that we need to protect these facilities continues to escalate on a daily basis.
Andrew, let me take you to a different path, if you would like. Let me ask something which is a bit more personal, if you would like. You've been a successful entrepreneur. You've built up a successful clean tech company, if I can call it that way. But it would be extremely helpful perhaps for younger entrepreneurs that they are coming into this sector, which is an extremely impactful sector, and I feel very kind of passionate about, to perhaps give us a bit of your personal perspective. What was your how was your trip? How was your journey? And what was perhaps your biggest failure? What was your lowest moment when you said, you know what, I cannot take that anymore and I need to change this? And how did you bounce back?
I'll be honest, I didn't have a plan. This adventure started with some good fortune and built up some momentum. And I started young, and well, that was enough. That was all the motivation I needed to keep going. And I banged my head a lot. How to scale? Oh boy, that was tough. How to introduce a new product, and how to effectively develop it and bring it to market. And oh man, banged my head a lot. And it took a while to get to a place of perspective where I realized I needed to slow down and figure out how to put this together the right way. And I'll do air quotes on the right way. It was the way that worked for us. It was a way that offered us the ability to be scalable, the way it allowed us to be reactive. And that was, it took a number of years to hit the brakes, to realize that we needed to figure out how to respond to those that challenge of how to grow up and to do that effectively. But as we overcame that, I think we've right-sized the business, and I believe we've got the appropriate kind of corporate principles here, and have built the team now to grow appropriately. I do want to offer, though, that very early on, and it's sort of like a personal methodology of mine, failure is good. I accept failure. It is very important to learn. It's really the best opportunity to learn. It's you bang your head, you fall down, you figure out why, and then you're able to kind of learn from that and then keep growing. So the mantra here that I offer to the engineering teams, to our commercial teams, to the entire organization is certainly it's a common one, but it's failing fast. And that is
failing
that really,
fast.
Yes, get there quickly, find that lesson, and then let's not repeat that. But we will. But essentially, failure is part of the process. A lot of what we do in this industry is it's new. There's not a lot of, and certainly we're speaking of some regulatory standards, but even those are getting rolled out year by year and getting tuned as they go. So that failure, that bumping of the head is really important. When I look back at my personal journey, could I have avoided some of that? Could I have slept a couple more nights along the way? Absolutely. But I wouldn't change it at this point. It's certainly informed who I am today and who the business is today.
How many times did you have to pivot, perhaps, or change the direction of your development team on your products?
Great question. I'll say we went all in on development in the US. It was 2007, 2008, and the market dropped. The entirety of our product line was there. Big pivot followed. We were all in on utility scale wind until 2010. Big pivot into solar. I would say at the core of the business, we are focused on helping owners gain perspective through IT, through software. That much has remained solid, but how we've approached the market, how the number of big decisions of strategy and direction, 2 or 3 times we've had to slow down. And in both cases, or in all cases rather, it was, okay, we need to take a broader perspective. This is not a solar industry from our perspective. It's not a wind industry. It's not a battery industry. We are seeing our customers straddle that, and it is a renewable energy industry, and that's how we view it. And each time we've caught ourselves, we've been a little too pigeonholed and needed to realize that the market really is broader, that we need to incorporate all of the technologies into our offerings.
How important on this journey you had on the success that you currently have was the building of the right team? And how many of your initial, if you would like, team members are still, in this journey with you?
Yeah, great question. I'd say a quarter of the team today has been here since 2007, 2008, and that's something that's a really we're family at this point, and that's been huge. But building the right team, We are, our trade is certainly technology. We apply it in renewables, so we can attract a wide set of individuals, but those with an EE background, those with knowledge of renewables, it's coming from IT services, even just SCADA platforms. It's different. So it's taken us time to build the right team, but what we've looked to do as a company is take your time to hire, but if it's not working out, unfortunately, pulling the trigger quickly, because we like to invest in the long term. We like to
Fail
invest
fast
in our
again.
team. Fail fast, yes. It's
Excellent.
true. Mm-hmm.
And be mindful of the time. If we can wrap this up about giving us your let's say feeling about the current situation with COVID-19. How is this disrupting your industry? But without being negative, what is the next day for Green IT, and how do you see things planning out after we go back to the new normal?
Right. Well, a lot of what we've, over the last month, it has been a lot of business as usual. And we're fortunate enough to be able to support our projects remotely, our clients remotely. Our software platform is really designed for distributed teams, and that aspect of the business is good. But this pandemic is real, and our ability to travel is limited. It has certainly impacted our ability to service some facilities, and we've had to make some decisions of doing what we can remotely to resolve an issue, or maybe make an issue more stable, and then look to schedule for the near future. And that's something that we've been, I'd say, lucky enough to get away with thus far, but it's something that we're being very mindful of. We do still have the ability here in the US to, we are working in an essential industry, and should we need to roll a truck, we can. But we're trying to be very mindful of our personnel and really all personnel involved in the facilities to make decisions. Is this critical? Can we push this down the line? The new normal, what's going to happen next? I'll be honest with you, I do like this remote work, and a lot of the team is responding well to it. I love being around my family and hanging out with my 3-year-old. So there's some upside here, but I'm really curious just about that, and how our team can adapt to the new normal, with perhaps balancing a partial work from home, or essential services being fulfilled in the warehouse and the lab. Those types of services we will need to keep up in the office, but maybe a broadening perspective to the ability to maintain this work from home if this pandemic is to continue for some time. Perhaps we can adjust our internal policies with regards to remote work. I will offer, though, that we have seen some supply chain issues, nothing too severe. Lead times typically of 1 week or bumped out 2-3 weeks. Some of the stuff actually showed up on time, but when we do place orders, we are seeing some items, at least initially, indicating some longer delays. But all indications from our customers are the development projects are moving forward. The demand is still there. A couple force majeure notices have been offered, but they've really been more proactive. There's really the events have not occurred, and I think folks are just trying to play it safe in general.
We've seen a couple of companies that they've tried to, if you would like to call upon force majeure, but we see that first of all, force majeure is treated differently in different jurisdictions. So it's really hard to let's say, to justify a force majeure in an English contract, especially if it's not specifically mentioned. It doesn't specifically mention pandemics. So different laws in different jurisdictions in different countries have a different approach to that. I agree with you. We see supply chain disruptions, not due to lack of spare parts or components, but due to the fact that the logistics have shut down essentially, or they are overwhelmed with everything else that is happening.
Yeah.
But our latest, if you would like, information from China is that most of the factories are again open and they are producing. And people that they have somehow factored in their spare part strategy, or if they're in a construction mode, they factored in any sort of contingency planning on their time schedule, and then they can create this kind of buffer on their products. It is extremely interesting to hear your opinion about the new norm, especially on our working environment. But just before we started recording this, we were discussing about the fact that our industry is resilient, and the fact that the need for electrification of heat, electrification of transportation is still there. And so we see that the renewable energy industry as an industry still is extremely resilient and robust, and things will get back to normal in the next 6 to 18 months, if someone can make a prediction. What's your opinion on
that? Get back to normal. Yeah, 6, 10, 12 months, perhaps. I think it's going to be an interesting and challenging summer. I am in no way epidemiologist, but there's a lot of talk of a second wave of the virus, which may put us back in a similar position of sheltering in place in the future. So that's going to be really hard to factor in here. But optimistically, we have been delaying projects to the summer, and hopeful that we're able to, in a very protective and safe way, be able to resume some of our normal activities. But as an organization, in kind of our needs to meet face to face, I think we're taking a bit of a broader look towards the fall and then beyond. I would like to think that it's right around the corner here, but I'll be a little cautiously kind of giving a little bit more buffer time for resolution. It's a very strange time, not a lot of recent past to look back upon, but the one thing that does remain constant here, and just to echo your thought there, is decarbonization will continue. Electrification of our vehicles, this is real. So at least on the demand side, it's only going to grow, and these challenges that we're facing today that may persist for the rest of this calendar year, we will need to overcome them. We will need to continue building these portfolios and managing them appropriately. I was joking with a colleague the other day. He always gives me a hard time for the amount of travel that's in my personal schedule, and his comment was, see, I told you so. You can do this with some less travel. And he's right. We are able to do some of this service work. It is very important for us to connect with our teams in the field. It's very important for us to connect with our customers. But we can find other ways of doing so, maintaining more safety for us as individuals, but continue to push forward with this clean energy revolution. It's necessary, and we'll just have to solve the problems so that we can keep up the pace.
Excellent. We keep this positivity towards the end, and the hope that things will get better soon, and that our industry will continue persevering ahead. And on that, Andrew Eisenberg, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to see you soon in person as well.
Likewise. Thank you so much. It was great talking today. Thanks.